Alright, here it is, the next project, a 19-old Farmall Cub. I use this, I used to drag logs out of the woods with it, but now it's just not. I put a new governor spring on it, I was putting the carburetor, gone through stuff like that, but today we'll do a leak down test or maybe just a compression test on this, because this doesn't have a compression release on it, so we're safe to do a compression test. So maybe we'll do that. I know the battery is all charged up. This runs on 6 volt, but you can just hook up 12 volt to these tractors and run them too. The other thing is tractors that have a magneto. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. Tractors that have a magneto don't need a battery to run. The tractors that only have a coil do. So I'll explain that in a little bit too. Let's get into it. I'll start taking this thing apart. Carburetor does not look good at all. I did have some of the bolts out of this thing already. Alright, so just put some of the goodies back on it. Alright, so this right here is a magneto. So you can tell if it's got a magneto or a coil because this wire will go to an individual, like the old school round coils. But this will produce its own spark without having a battery. So you could hand crank these engines over and they would run just fine with a magneto. Otherwise you need a coil to run. Alright, we'll do a compression test. Maybe we'll do a leak down on this thing too. We'll do compression first and then maybe a leak down to see what's going on. Pulled all the plugs, they all look super carbon fouled. I hope you guys saw that. For whatever reason this camera shut off on itself. Alright, so I'll show you. Here's how carbon fouled those things were. Just black and sooty. Alright. I'll grab the battery for this and then we'll... Okay, I'm going to just grab the battery. So this is a old tractor. So sometime in like the 60s for the most part they switched over to a negative ground. But this tractor is a positive ground. So it's opposite what you think. I'll hook up my ground. Grab my positive. Let's just go straight to the starter. Alright. Crank it over and see what comes out of the cylinders. You can see it's full of stuff in there. Whoop. Just take it out of gear. I put a chock block behind there, so. Alright, so now we'll get it set up, throw a compression tester on there and see what we got. Alright, so you guys should all know this one, but a compression tester. Thread this in, just enough to get the O-ring tight, and we'll see what we get. .40, and I should do the give it a little bit of oil down each cylinder, but that kind of, I think that pretty much says it right there. 60, so it's kind of like the bare minimum. I'll have to look it up online and see what these ran for compression. They probably weren't. Gosh, I bet you they're higher compression than 60. I would say 60 is about the limit for an engine to run. 110. The other thing that's interesting, that didn't hold either. 110. That's pretty good. So, definitely cylinder 4 we have an issue with. Cylinders are typically labeled, I think on most car engines, the furthest forward. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the firing order is 1, 3, 4, 2. Almost all 4 cylinders are that way. Okay, cylinder number 2. 90. And there is a thing where they should all be in a certain percentage of within each other, but we definitely have a problem on cylinder 4. I don't know if I said cylinder 1 before. This is cylinder 1. So that's 70. And cylinder 1. So 1 and 4 seem like an issue. So I guess what we could do now is, since we aren't building compression, we can check and see with the leak down tester whether it's, that's why it's such a much better test. We can see if it's leaking air through the crankcase past the rings, what we call blow by, or if it's pushing it through the radiator, then we'd have a bad head gasket, or if it's coming through the intake, which means our intake valve would be either burnt or not seating properly, or the exhaust, where we'd have an exhaust valve burnt or not seating properly. But this is where we have to get that cylinder to top dead center. Dead center on cylinder number 1. And up here. And I'll hook up the leak down tester and we'll see what this tells us. The tester has big enough threads. I don't think it does. But good thing I have my other tester. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hook this up to shop air and calibrate it. So my shop air is probably a little bit too high right now. Wrong hose connection, so I might have to run up and grab another hose here. I'll be right back. Alright, I got my other air line. Hopefully this will be good now. Holy crap. Guess I got some water in my lines here. Okay. Hook up my shop air. So, what I need to do, there's some water in that line. I got it out of there. So, right now my shop pressure is like 120 psi. So I'm going to crank this down. You see it's adjusting here. This is what I'm watching. So as I turn it in, it increases the pressure. I wanted to sit in that set area. And I want it to hold steady, because if I make an adjustment, it'll keep climbing for a little bit. But that's holding steady. Okay, now I can take this and put this air to my cylinder. This is where you got to be careful, because the engine over pretty easy, especially on a single cylinder. So we'll see if it does it. That cylinder is showing 20% leak, which, well, actually even better than that. That's not bad at all. So it's really good. It's in the good range. Okay, that's what we want to see. If we get it down in here, that's bad. Moderate is probably too much. So disconnect there, and we'll go to the next cylinder in the firing order. So it goes 1, 3, 4, 2. Let's go to cylinder 3. Basically all I'm going to do is turn it a quarter turn, and that should be at cylinder number 3. Cylinder 3 showing as well about the same amount of blow by, which is nothing. Alright, and I'll do another quarter turn and cylinder 4. Well, that seemed to be too good to be true, and I forgot to take out, there's a Schrader valve in here, which allows air to flow one way but not the other, so I think that's why I wasn't getting any blow-by, because I looked down and I saw a valve that was open. Okay, that's more like it. Let's go back to cylinder 1 again. Okay, there's top dead center, cylinder number 1. It's possible this is on the exhaust valve or exhaust stroke. I don't think so. So we'll see if we're leaking. So we're at like moderate leak, I think. Check everywhere here. And that's definitely blow by. So I'm at 40%. And that is definitely blow by because I opened up and I could hear it through the breather. But I can hear it through the coming out of the crankcase. So that's not good. So we'll move to the cylinder 3 now. Another thing with a magneto, you'll hear this distinct click when it fires that cylinder, and that is just before it reaches top dead center. So I can rotate it till I hear the next click. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, there's cylinder 3 at 38% or so, which is on the verge of being bad. But cylinder 4, it might not be quite to top dead center. Heard a click, but it sounded weak. I think I'm there. So again, moderate leak, which is definitely going past the rings again. I don't hear any other noises. So what I'm doing is, oops, wrong way. What I'm doing is listening through the exhaust, looking in the, listening through the radiator cap, and then listening through the intake on this side, and then, alright, dang. Well, I guess we'll tear this engine down. 1, 3, 4. 2 was our last cylinder. And I can see the valves. And those are definitely seated all the way. So again. Again, moderate leakage. And again, through the crankcase again. So I think you know what's next is pulling the head off of this thing.